Welcome to the Martinus Cosmology Podcast. My name is McGovern and I am your host for today. But not the only host, because I'm accompanied here by Micael Söderberg from Stockholm. This is a co-production with the Swedish podcast Kosmologipodden. So welcome Micael. And
thank you, Mary. Nice to be here.
And our guest today is Else Byskov, who is a Dane who lives in Spain. Else has written 9 books in English about Martinus cosmology. She's also written several books on hiking in Spain. Welcome, Else.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
And it's not the first time you've been here, so
no.
Welcome back, we could say.
It's a pleasure every time.
Yes. So, Else, the reason we have invited you here today is that you've written an essay called "What is the best available evidence for the survival of human consciousness after permanent bodily death?" Very exciting title. And I understand it was part of a competition.
Yes.
Maybe you could tell us about the competition.
Of course. One day I think it was in April or May 2021 last year, that I was looking at Facebook, and suddenly there was this post about a competition with exactly that title: "What is the best available evidence for the survival of human consciousness after permanent bodily death?" And I was just, yes! I'd been waiting for this, I thought, for 20 years.
Okay.
And I was so excited about it. And it was the American millionaire Robert Bigelow, who has made a lot of money having cheap hotels. And he's also a space explorer. So he's very interested in, what shall I say, things that are not mainstream. And he wanted to know about the survival of human consciousness. Is it possible or is it not possible? So he put up this competition, essay competition. The maximum words would have to be 40,000 words. It could not exceed 40,000 words. And the prizes were huge. First prize was $500,000. Second prize was $300,000. Third prize was $150,000. And then there were 9 prizes of $50,000. It was just like huge. He spent so much money on getting this question answered. And I was thinking, whoa, this is great. This is what I have been doing for the last 20 years. I've been studying this subject, and I have the Martinus material behind me. And I tell you, I was so sure that I would win.
Okay.
Because I was thinking, yeah, with the Martinus insight into this, and I don't think that any other competitors would have this. And I know I was being a bit optimistic, but there you are. So I spent most of summer last year writing my 40,000 words on the subject, and it didn't cost me a lot of work, because my second book is titled "The Undiscovered Country: A Non-Religious Look at Life After Death." So I'd already researched it. So what I did was, like, based on the research I'd already done, I boiled it down and added, of course, what I had learned since, and that was the result of the essay. It had to be handed in by the 1st of August last year, and the winners were announced in November.
Yeah, and did you? How much did you win?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't win.
You didn't win.
And I was. I wasn't terribly disappointed, because I thought that my contribution would probably be too spiritual. It would be. I mean, the ones that won, they were all moving on the scientific level, not going beyond that. And once you have studied Martinus, you cannot help going beyond the physical level and going into the spiritual level, where everything has its origin. So I thought that I probably didn't win, because my essay was simply too spiritual. It was beyond what anybody could have imagined, and I don't know how there were 5 judges, and they were all very much based in materialistic science.
Yeah.
I mean, there was one who had studied a lot of regression therapy, and I don't know if you can call that materialistic science, but yes, it was. It was based on what he had heard from the people he had regressed.
Yeah.
So, well, that was just what it was. I think it was simply too early. This information is to a wide extent. A lot of people are not ready to hear it. But anyway, there you are. I published my essay a week after the winners had been announced, first in English and then in Danish, and I also translated it into Spanish, but it hasn't been published yet. But anyway, so it's out there, and
can you get it as an ebook on Amazon?
Yes,
or?
it's out on both paper and ebook on Amazon. In English, and on in Danish you can get it on Saxo. Yeah.
How about Swedish? Are you planning to reach out to the Swedish readers as well?
I wish.
We have
somebody has to translate it into Swedish then.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But we have Världsbild förlag in Sweden. And they publish a lot of secondary literature connected to Martinus Cosmology. So you maybe have read Søren Green's book.
Yeah, of course I have, but I mean, I have no contacts in Sweden, so...
Yeah, well, now you have.
Yeah, exactly. And if some Swede comes and says he would like to translate it into Swedish, I'll be more than happy. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
great.
Of course.
I will keep my heads up
and
antenna up.
So, what is it about this research area that really fascinates you? What got you into this area of research?
I don't know. Because when I was 15, my father died. And I couldn't even mourn. I just knew he wasn't dead. So I thought, what's there to be so sad about? I know he's somewhere else. And I think I've known it without knowing that I knew it my whole life. Mm. And when I encountered the Martinus material, that was when I was 45, that was in 1995. I mean, I was just over the moon. I was so totally happy that I had found it. Mm. And every word resonated with me. I just knew this was true. This was the truth. That was how it was. So, and that's when I wrote my first book, and it came out in 2002 with the title Death is an Illusion, a logical explanation based on the worldview of Martinus. And since then I've written 9 other books, but in English, and 8 of them have come out in Danish. 1 in Spanish and 1 in German. Anyway, so it was just, it became, from the time I met Martinus's work, it became my overall passion in life. Mm.
Yes.
That's great. We really need authors that can write about Martinus's work, so that's a good thing.
Thank you.
Really like it. So. And you present a lot of evidence, of course. That's the main purpose of the essay, I think.
Yes, it was
to
indeed.
Present evidence that consciousness survives the physical death. And can you describe what kind of evidence do you present?
Yes, of course. There's first of all, and this is the most well-known. That's the near-death experience, and hundreds of books have been published in English about the near-death experience. People who have had near-death experiences and people who have researched into it. And there's so much material that you would think that everybody knew what a near-death experience is. And the near-death experience is when you are clinically dead. You're clinically dead somewhere on the ground, on the table, wherever. And you still experience things. So it's a fascinating. I mean, reading all these experiences, work is just such a fascinating thing, and what they encounter is another world, a world that is realer than real. It is as real as the physical world, but much more beautiful, with fantastic landscapes, fantastic music, light. Normally there's a being of light that greets them, and he will in every case say, sorry, it's not your time yet, you have to go back. And they're very, very sad about this. But recently, and I would like to mention two very, I think, very important near-death experiences, because recently there was Ibn Alexander, who was a brain surgeon, and he was very skeptical about this whole thing, and didn't believe in it at all. And then he had a very serious infection of his brain. I can't remember what it was, but he was absolutely dead, and he was dead for a long time. And then he had the most fantastic experiences on the other side. And then he came back and wrote about it in his book, Proof of Heaven. And it has been much talked about, because he was a skeptic that had actually himself experienced any of the experience. And he became very known, and he's well known, still well known. And strangely enough, he did not compete in the competition. He did not participate. And I think one can see a lot of interviews with him on YouTube. On YouTube. Yeah, and he's very convinced that this is not death is not the end. Absolutely not. He's very interesting. And also, I love Anita Moriani's book, Dying to Be Me, because she was so ill with cancer, and she died, and had a fantastic experience also on the other side. She experienced so much love, and she found out that the reason why she had cancer was her lack of self-love, that she had been reproaching herself all life, and it had really undermined her health. And she then came back and she said, she was told by somebody, you have to go back, and said, I won't go back into that body. That body is absolutely no good. And she said, no, don't worry. When you get back, you will get healed. In 7 days, she was completely cancer-free, because she had experienced this enormous love that's on the other side, this love that is so healing. So it was like a complete mystery to her doctors how she could heal that quickly. And I think it's a lovely book she has written, and I think these two bestsellers that I have mentioned are so convincing about the whole truth of the near-death experience. And
that's one of the evidence.
Well, it's only one of the evidence. And then there's Children Who Remember Past Lives, which is also a huge object of investigation. And it was started by Ian Stevenson from the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. And he passed some years ago, but now his work has been reassumed by Jim Tucker, who is now doing the same. And I just saw the other day that he has published a book that was called Before.
Okay.
And I was so eager to get it, but I haven't been able to get it yet. But I really want to read that, because that's also about children who remember living before.
And the title contrasts with the Grayson's book, Bruce Grayson's book,
yes,
which is called After.
Yeah, exactly. Because I should mention that After is also a compilation of near-death experiences. So it's becoming more and more widespread, the knowledge about this.
And of course, Raymond Moody was perhaps the first one.
It.
So I remember I read his books way back in the late 70s or
70s, I think,
beginning of the 80s, I think.
Yeah, it was
for me
in
it was
75.
the beginning of the 80s.
No, Raymond Moody was the one who started it. And that was fantastic also, because he was finally somebody who took it seriously. Yeah, and he sold 15 million copies. So it's not as if that wasn't a bestseller.
Yeah, and there was Elisabeth Kubler-Ross.
Yes, she also studied it and wrote many books about it. She was also fantastic. Her books are wonderful.
You mentioned this about children who remembers their past lives. Do you have an example there that you can share with us?
Yeah, I once asked my first grandson, I asked him, who were you when you were big? And he was so cheered up by the answer. He was very young. He was maybe 3 years. He said, "Oh, I was a hunter. Sometimes I went and fished in the sea." And like, he was very happy to talk about it. And my thesis, I think that ask any 3-year-old, who were you when you were big? They'll be happy to answer. So yeah. And but I mean, there's so many wonderful examples in the work of Ian Stevenson. As I said, I haven't read Jim Tucker's book yet, but I'm sure there will be many as well.
I think you mentioned a boy that was murdered who was called Ashok Kumar.
Yes, Ravi Shankar.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful story. Yeah. It was when Ravi Shankar, he was born, and he was about 2 or 3 months old when his mom discovered a scar that went from one ear to the other. It was a very clear scar. And she was wondering, it looked like a knife, like a cut from a sharp knife or a razor. And when he began to talk, he said, he was called Ravi Shankar by his parents. He said, "I'm not Ravi Shankar, I'm Asa Kumak. So why do you call me this?" And he said, "Oh, by the way, I was murdered. I was murdered with a razor, and I know who killed me." And he could point out the killers. And this story made headlines, of course. He lived in India. And I remember reading about it when I was, I don't know, in my 20s or 30s. And I thought, that's a funny story. But then, of course, at the time, I couldn't explain it. But it is one of Ian Stevenson's, like, his main examples of somebody, because he could say who he was, and it was a fact that this guy, Asa Kumak, had actually lived, and his parents were still alive. So it was a really good example where everything fit. You had the murder. Yeah.
It's not Ravi Shankar, the musician, is it? The famous sitar player?
No, it's just the same name.
Just the same
Maybe
name.
it's an ordinary name in India. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I was wondering about that.
I wondered about that when I read it.
Yeah.
Radio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
And he had a traumatic passing to the afterlife. And is there a connection there to remembering?
Yes. There absolutely is. There absolutely is. Most children who remember past lives will have had a violent death. Being murdered, being killed in an accident, all sorts of things that will have made such an impression in their consciousness that it is retained after they are reborn. Because normally we are not supposed to remember our past lives. And there's a very good reason for that. Because Martinus says it would be very confusing for us in our present incarnation to remember not only one past life, but that say we could remember 20, 40 past lives. We would be all confused about what is all this about. So it is on purpose that the veil of oblivion is sort of pulled down when we reincarnate. But if you have had a very violent death, this veil is not it's not watertight. So you will remember.
Probably there's a lot of energy into that experience, so that's why it may come forward in this life.
Energy and fear, and unhappiness.
But what about children who are extremely talented? I've seen it a lot in my own previous line of work with small children who played musical instruments, where they have a talent when they're 4 years old, where you say, how could they possibly have learned this so quickly?
I mean, talents are really one of the big proofs that we have lived before. Really one, because we all know there's only one way to be good at anything, and that is to practice. We don't get good at anything when we lie on the sofa. So we have to practice. And everybody practices something. And when we are reborn, we take the level of practice that we have reached in our last life with us into our next incarnation. So we never waste time practicing something, because we will take the level we have reached with us into our next life. And we have so many examples of extreme talents that children are born with that they could not possibly have learned in their 3-4 years when they start showing their talents. And as you said, I think the most obvious ones are when children play an instrument, a musical instrument, way beyond their years.
Yeah. I've seen 7-year-old children playing better than people who have finished studying at the conservatory.
Yeah. And me also. I play the guitar fairly well, and I played all my life, not every day, but sometimes really much and sometimes not so much. And I like to look at YouTube and see 11-year-old girls playing sections by composers that I can't play them. And I know I have tried, but it's too difficult. But they can. Yes. So that's, for me, is a really...
It's an obvious sign of reincarnation.
Yeah,
really,
absolutely.
it is. And the thing is that these talents, in many cases, not always, but in many cases, do not coincide with any talents that the parents have. So I think every child has talents that do not coincide with those of the parents. Now, you could ask a scientist, a traditional materialistic scientist, where does this come from? And he will not have an answer. He will not even have a clue. And it is simply because the idea of reincarnation has not yet reached the mainstream science, the mainstream materialistic science. It is not included. And I think that, Martinus says that you inherit 30% of your talents from the mother, another 30% from the father, and then you take your own talent with you from former lives, the last 40%. And the 40% is growing. For each incarnation you live, you expand your own inheritance, your inheritance from your past lives. So that will be interesting to see in the future, that you will have less and less of the parental talents.
I think it's interesting that if you talk to people in ordinary musical circles, there's a lot of mystery around the term talent. Mm-hmm. And people connect it very much with chance. They say, well, he just happened to be very talented. She just happens not to have any talent at all. And they think it's all just a matter of chance. It's potluck. Yeah. Who gets talent and who doesn't. And I think it's certainly for me, it was a very big mystery when I was studying music. Like, why is someone more talented than I am when we work equally hard? Yeah. We work equally hard at achieving our goals, but someone is more talented than I am.
And that kind of takes away the credit for the one with the great talent, because this person has really dwelled into that.
Worked hard.
Whatever he is or she is doing. But if you say, oh, well, you have talent, it's easy for you, but it wasn't easy in the beginning.
No, but if you have a one life view, then you don't see that they have practiced in previous lives.
No.
So then life can seem really unfair.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I actually start my essay by stating the fact that the one life theory, which is prominent today in the Western world, has never been proved. Nobody has ever been able to prove that nothing survives the death of the physical body. And this was a pure Martinus quote. And it's true. The one life theory has never been proved. So why does it have so many people who adhere to it? Anyway, so what we're trying here to do is to prove that, or disprove the one life theory.
But of course, the main reason maybe is that we don't remember our past lives, and you said it was a reason for that. But do you have any memories from your past life, or do you have
I do have some. Yeah, I do have some, and but I don't know how they have sort of come up gradually over my life. You know, I was born with a very huge talent for cooking. And once I started reading the Martinus, I could tell that when I was 5 years old, I started to cook. I had my little doll's kitchen, and I loved it. And I cooked and cooked and cooked, and it was just pure bliss for me. And then, of course, I moved on and repeated other past lives. So, and I could see that I also had a talent here and a little talent there, whatever I had been doing. But when I realized that I had been good at cooking, and that I was good at cooking, and I had been cooking from...
You're still good at cooking.
Yes, I'm still fairly good at it. I realized, yes, I'm sure I had an inn. I had an inn somewhere in Europe, and because I knew that if you had an inn, you would never starve. You would always have something to eat.
And you went on to write books on vegetarian cooking, I know.
Yeah.
Even if it's not your main interest, but you...
No, I wrote to... I mean, I haven't given it my best. They could have been way better, but I have spent most of my time with the Martinus material because I find that much more interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in your book, you also mention regression therapy as a way of explaining that consciousness survives death.
That's also it's a huge area, and it's been very well researched by Michael Newton, who had the Newton Institute, and he'd taken thousands of people back into their past lives, and in this way cured all sorts of ailments and pains they had. And is written some very interesting, very good books about it. So and he found out that it wasn't that difficult. You could put people into maybe just a light trance or a light hypnosis, and they would come up and just ask them the simple question: how did your present ailment arise? And they would know. They would know. There was a man who had terrible problem in his leg, and he couldn't walk, and he'd been it hurt every day in his life. So he was put behind, like he was taken back to where this started, and he said, "Oh, I can see I was a soldier in the French war, and I was stabbed with a bayonet in my leg, and it was terribly painful." And he had described then how that felt and where it was, in which battlefield it was. I don't know if it was the First World War. It might have been. Anyway, when he came out, the pain had gone, and it stayed gone. So it was just like,
gone as well.
Yeah. So it was just like an amazing thing. And this Michael Newton, he could just see that here he had something that was so extraordinary that he had to go on working with it. And he did. And he cured a lot of people. That's what regression therapy can do. It can cure you of the traumas you have from a past life. It's amazing. How that cure happens is a little bit of a mystery, but it seems that when you relive it and understand how it happened, it will have a healing effect. And then, you can resume a normal life. It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yes, and that fits with Martinus's explanation that illnesses can build up over several lives. Yeah. Like if you're born with some chronic disorders, then the cause is not in this life, but in a previous life.
Absolutely.
And also that the cause of the illness is not the body, it's rather the thoughts or the experiences,
the consciousness,
the energy that surrounds us.
Exactly.
You write a lot about our aura and the energy field.
Yeah.
So.
What we have to understand in this connection is that there are two levels of existence. There's the physical level, the one we live in now, and the one that a lot of people believe is the only existing level. And there's the spiritual level, which is the level where all things have their origin. It's the level of thought. Thoughts are energy, and energy, it's the energy in your thoughts that create your body. So we have to, in order to understand the world, the universe, everything, we have to realize that there are two levels of existence, and that we have two bodies. We have the physical body now, but we only have that occasionally. But we always have our spiritual body, which is identical to our consciousness, which is identical to the energy field that surrounds the physical body, and which holds the core of ourselves, our I, and everything that we have learned in this present cycle. So we are simply not the physical body, and every time the physical body dies, each and every time, the spiritual body survives, goes on for a good long rest on the spiritual plane, and comes back in order to continue its evolution on the physical plane. So until we realize that we are more than this physical body, and that the spiritual body is who we really are, we're not going to understand anything really. But I mean, and that's the great thing about this research that is happening, the near-death experience. They absolutely confirm this. Everybody who's had a near-death experience has stopped being afraid of death. They're looking forward to going back, and they say, "I am not this body. I am my consciousness. This is who I am. I'm not this body." So, yeah, the physical body is an instrument that the consciousness forces uses as long as the instrument is useful.
So how do you reincarnate? How is a new embryo formed? We talk about embryogenesis. How does the being on a spiritual plane get back to the physical plane?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question that I love to answer. Actually, Martinus has explained this meticulously, so there's nothing...
you also have a symbol by Martinus.
Exactly,
in your essay,
symbol number 34.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that he explains exactly how it happens. It happens like this, that the spiritual being that is ready to reincarnate is sitting up in the spiritual world, and it's actually sitting in the kingdom of bliss. But that's a different story.
Remembering
its past lives or whatever, yeah. And it is emitting some sort of energy that tells that it is getting ready to reincarnate. But it's on a very high vibrational level, and normally physical beings, they cannot reach a level high enough to get a vibrational level high enough to get in contact with the discarnate being that is ready to reincarnate. But during intercourse, our energy, our vibration goes up and goes up, and it rises and rises and rises. And during orgasm, it reaches its peak vibration. And that vibration is high enough to attract a spiritual being. So at the time that of conception, when the child is conceived, there are 3 beings in play, not just 2, not just the mother and the father, but the spiritual being that they have attracted with their lovemaking. And it is the spiritual being that has all the information for the embryogenesis. The egg and the sperm cell, they really don't have a clue. They're only there to generate the physical conditions for the creation of the new body. And when the spiritual being enters the fertilized egg, the zygote, it immediately starts to divide and
multiply itself.
And all this. It's very complicated.
Very rapid.
Very rapid. So amazing.
Yeah,
it really is a miracle.
Yeah.
So it immediately starts dividing, and there's 203 different cell types in any human being, and it starts to divide them and distribute their
organize,
distribute labor, and then of course it's its own talents, the talents that it has perfected during former lives that create the new body, and everything that it has, everything that being had become in its past life will be with it, and it will start its next incarnation from exactly the place where it stopped the last time it died. So it's just a continuous evolution that it starts on. So it is it's very interesting, because you can tell when you look at a baby, so many things it can do. How can it do that? I mean, a 1 day old baby can whimper, it can scream, it can moan, it can do so much, and it's just and nobody's thinking, oh, that's normal, they can do that, but they don't realize how much information there is in its consciousness. So it is a consciousness that reincarnates into the fertilized egg, and it is this consciousness that creates the new body, and that's why the new body can have all the talents that it has, because otherwise, where would those talents come from? And you ask science that, and they are silent. They have no idea. And I understand that, because you have to have the whole of the spiritual world incorporated in your understanding. And if you don't have that, that's fantastic that those two cells, the egg and the sperm cell, they can do all that.
That is really amazing. A miracle, if it would be like that. So.
Exactly. And where would they get a consciousness from to put into the new egg and into the new baby? The baby is born with a consciousness. That's clear for everybody.
Yes, and one of the questions that people ask is, what is human consciousness and where is it? I mean, many people think consciousness is located in the brain. Other more modern researchers say that the consciousness is non-local. They talk about non-local consciousness in connection with near-death experiences. Mm-hmm. But you see, when a baby comes, that there already is consciousness.
Yeah, exactly.
It's from the very beginning.
Yeah, but the consciousness is not located in the brain. This is the mainstream narrative within the materialistic science, but it is not. The consciousness sits around the body in the shape of our aura, and it goes out from the body at about 50 centimeters. You know, this has been very much studied, and there's been a lot of books written about aura and chakras and all those the different chakras.
Are you thinking about Kirlian photography?
No, and I'm not specifically talking about that, but I had my own aura photographed by somebody who mastered this Kirlian photography, and it's very interesting because you can actually get a photo of your aura and you can see the different colors. But I'm thinking more about, there's a woman called Barbara Brennan who has written a brilliant book called Hands of Light. They're often healers that write about how they can heal people without touching the body, but just like massaging the aura. And you can see the pre-stages of illnesses as a grey lump in the aura. And Martinus is in a complete agreement with this, because he says all illnesses, irrespective of what it is, have their origin in the aura or in the consciousness. It's not a physical ailment as such. It all comes from the energy field of the consciousness
and the thought climate.
Yes,
and of course you have to change your way of thinking as well. I think the healer can do their job, but you have you have to change your way of life as well, or way of thinking.
Yeah, I mean, if you have been a doctor that has been educated at a normal or university with a materialistic approach to understanding health, then obviously it is such a new way of thinking that he will not grasp it in this life. He will have to wait till he reincarnates to see, like, to expand. It's so difficult for traditional doctors to grasp this, and they have fought with everything they've got to denounce the near-death experience, to say it's not real, it's just the dying brain and whatever. But of course, people don't go on believing them, because the evidence grows and grows and grows, and this explanation is no longer valid. It's not good enough, and a lot of people can see that. So it's exciting times that we can see that our whole perspective of life and our perception of reality is expanding rapidly, and
another interesting thing that you mentioned about the physical body is that we change our cells, all our cells in the body, including the neurons.
Yes.
That's sort of controversial, I think.
Yes, and exactly. And you put this information to a medical scientist, a normal, like, materialistic scientist, and he doesn't know what to do with it, because it's a fact, everybody knows it. In a year, all your physical material has been replaced by new cells. You don't have one cell left after a year, and Martinus says it. He says exactly the same.
Yeah.
So what? So where's the constant?
Yeah.
Where's the constant of the body? And of course, it's not a problem once you have your consciousness, which is the constant anyway. But if you think that it's your brain and the cells in your brain that are the constant, that is who you are, then you can't explain it.
No, because the brain is gone after a year. You've got a new brain.
Yeah, I've got a new brain.
Where are the memories then?
Yeah, then are memories. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Martinus had this very good example, I think, because we have an I. We say, I was asleep, I like pizza, I'm going to Italy tomorrow, I drive a car. And he says, well, everybody uses the word I, but a materialistic scientist will deny the existence of this I, because he says, we don't have an I, we just have the brain. But will the scientist say the brain likes pizza? The brain is going to Italy tomorrow? No, of course not. So it's absurd. It's absurd to deny something as obvious as this. So, well, anyway, the whole process of renewal of cells, which is huge. It's so fast I can't even remember the numbers. It's thousands of cells per minute. It's millions per hour. It's really an exchange that is serious.
And it's a good thing. It happens without we don't have to think about it. It goes on automatically because we have the talents to build up a body, and it's a part of our evolution billions years ago.
You see it very clearly with the skin. You can see the skin dries and flakes off, and new skin comes.
When you take a bath and
off it goes.
If you cut yourself, you get new skin and so on.
And that's also the healing ability of the body is, of course, also in the consciousness. And it's amazing if you cut yourself in a week, it's gone.
It's really amazing. I think
it's a miracle.
Yes.
And well, that's just business as usual.
But isn't that the principle of reincarnation at the micro level?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is.
It definitely is.
So that's
we reincarnate into a new physical body on a daily level. Only it's partial. It's a partial reincarnation because only part of our body has been exchanged within the last 24 hours. And this, of course, is in opposition to what happens to the butterfly, because in his article, the principle of reincarnation, Martinus mentions the butterfly, which uses 4 or 3 physical bodies in the same life. First, he has an egg, then you have the chrysalis, then you have a larva, and then you have the butterfly. 4 different bodies in one and the same life. And that's the principle of reincarnation made clear for everybody to see.
Absolutely. I don't know if we have the time, Mary. It's you who decides, but I was also interested in what you write about multiple personality disorders, because if we would take the brain from one person and put it in another person, probably we wouldn't find a new person there, because the personality is not situated in the brain. It is connected, as you say, to the energy field and to our spiritual body. And
I'm happy you asked this, because the multiple personality disorder is a highly interesting phenomenon, although it's very, very strange. And it is simply, well, I can't say simply, but it is so that if a child has been abused at an early age, the reality becomes simply too much for it to bear. And it partly withdraws its consciousness simply to protect itself from more abuse. It partly withdraws its consciousness from its body. And once you have withdrawn your consciousness partly, your aura becomes weak. Your aura is, when it's healthy, is a strong shield that sits around your body and prevents other spiritual beings to come in. But once you have withdrawn your aura, or your consciousness and your aura has been weakened, you open up for discarnate beings to possess your body. And this is much more common than a lot of people think, because it's not something that has been spoken a lot about. But there are some people who, when they die, they are so afraid of passing on to the spiritual plane, because now they realize they don't have a physical body, but they realize that they're actually not dead. So what to do? And I don't want to go. They might see the light con that sort of invites them to pass on to the spiritual plane, but they are so afraid to pass on that they don't want to. So they somehow manage to stay earthbound. And once you are earthbound and without your own physical body, that is not a fun situation. And they will roam to see if there's something that they can possess. And then if they see such an aura that is down, they will enter that body and possess that body. And it will probably not be the only one, because some of those who have specialized in getting those discarnate beings out have counted up to 50 discarnate beings in one person, and it's absolutely horrendous for the original owner of the body, obviously.
It sounds very, very busy.
Yeah, but what is most interesting is that when the body, or the spirit that is in charge of the body, will have one set of illnesses and one set of talents. One spirit will speak fluently French, and then when it shifts, because they're fighting to get through, so the French speaker is pushed away, and on comes another one who doesn't know a word of French, and the person who was talking French to the other person 5 minutes ago said, "What happened now? Why don't you speak French?" Well, that was somebody else, or whatever they say, and they can have allergies, can come and go. One multiple had a person who was allergic to orange juice, and when he drank orange juice, when this person was in charge, it would rash all over the whole body would be covered in a rash. And then when it changed to another personality that was not allergic to orange juice, the rash would disappear in no time. And it's so interesting. So that, and I think that is actually the ultimate proof that you are not your physical body. You are your consciousness. But of course you have to realize, you have to know that this can actually happen, that discarnate beings can come in and possess a physical body, and that it can only happen in cases where the aura is very down. You cannot enter a strong aura, you cannot penetrate.
I have read that you can, someone who's drunk can very easily be possessed.
Absolutely, that is so true. That's a good point, because when you drink a lot of alcohol, you also weaken your aura. Your aura will be very weakened, and then you can get possessed by other. It will happen in bars that when you're drinking. And when you have had a lot to drink, your aura will be so down that you can be possessed by another drinker who is hanging around in the bar, expecting this to happen. So he jumps into your body and spends all the money that you had to take home to your wife and children, spends it all, gets even more drunk. The body gets even more drunk. It collapses
and you have a
on
blackout.
the floor.
You don't remember anything.
No, you don't. You just it leaves. Then the hangover is left to the original owner of the body, who then wakes up with an empty pocket and a colossal hangover. So yes, that is happens.
Yeah.
I have seen interviews with people who committed murder, and
some people say that they was another person, or they weren't there. They can't remember anything. Or
exactly, that's true.
And we can expect that they were somewhat
possessed.
Yeah, they were possessed.
That's really scary. But Martinus has written about this in an article, I think.
Yeah, he has written about possession.
It's called possession.
It's called possession.
You can find it on martinus.dk in the English section.
Yeah. And we can use prayer to keep them away, the other ones.
Yes,
exactly. Prayer is always a good idea.
Yeah.
So, I mean, anyway, if I should just do the conclude about this essay competition.
Yes,
I didn't win, and there were
sorry.
what I did find out was that there were 203 participants.
But that's very positive, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
203 people are interested in this.
Yeah, and they were all the essays that got a prize. They were all moving within what I would call materialistic science. Pim van Lommel, who very deservedly, he was a Dutch cardiologist who has researched near-death experiences for decades, very deservedly got the second prize.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, he did.
Oh.
The first prize went to an American who had also done a lot of research, so that was fine. What I had maybe expected was that there would be more publicity around this whole the whole idea that our consciousness survives. But it's been, maybe in the States, the prize giving was in Las Vegas, where Mr. Bigelow is where he lives. Yeah. And maybe in the local press there was something about it, but it never really, I wouldn't say it reached the mainstream media. And that was a pity, I think, that it was like it flared up and then it died down.
Okay. And are all the essays published collectively?
I'm not sure. I mean, you could read them online. Yeah. Mr. Bigelow's website was, I can't remember if it was bigelow.com or something, but you can just Google Robert Bigelow essay competition and it will come up. And at least the winners were published on the website. And I thought it was a bit strange because I read the two winners and then the third my husband read, and it was all about ghosts. So I think that was a very strange choice about ghosts who had haunted the trenches in the First World War. It was a strange search because that wasn't really very scientific. But anyway, you could read them online.
We will, I think.
We will, yes.
Yeah.
We will.
Yeah. So, is there anything you would like to add, Else, before we finish up?
Only one thing.
Yes.
Death is an illusion. Don't go around believing that it's the end. It is just
the beginning, maybe.
Yeah, it is absolutely not the end. And I think the sooner more people realize that, the better. Because when you believe in the one life theory, you believe that you can do anything and it will never have any consequences. You can murder, you can harm, you can hurt, you can lie, you can steal, you can be greedy. And it doesn't matter what I do. I only live once, so there's no consequences to my actions. But that is absolutely so not true, because everything you do has consequences. And karma shown in one life can be manifest in your life in a later life. So there's no escape whatever you do. So think about what you do. Treat others the way you would like to be treated. And be good. On those beautiful words, be good,
I would like to thank Else for visiting our podcast.
Thank you.
Which we have recorded here at the Martinus Centre in Klint in Denmark. And I would like to thank Micael Söderberg from Kosmologipodden in Stockholm.
Thank you, Mary.
And
thank you, Mary.
Yes, thank you.
For hosting our
My
podcast.
pleasure.
Yeah.
So that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.